All right, good evening. I will call to order the November 15th, 2023 meeting of the Larimer County Planning Commission. And we like to start our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you please join me for that? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you very much. So the Planning Commission, for those in the room and those watching online, are made up of volunteers appointed by the Board of County Commissioners, and we generally like to give a quick introduction of ourselves. So I will ask Commissioner Duffy to start, if you would, please.
Good evening. My name is Connor Duffy. I've been a planning commissioner for about a year and a half, and I live in the Timnath area.
Commissioner Slutsky.
Okay. I'm John Slutsky. I'm a commissioner living in southeast. I'm new, so I got to orient myself. Fort Collins, and I've been on the commission for getting close to 2 years.
Good evening. My name is Ann Bess Johnson, and I am from the Windsor area, and I have been on the commission for 5.5 years.
Hi all, my name's Shelby King. I live in LaPorte. I have been on the commission just since July of this year.
Good evening. My name is Patrick Rowe. I've been on the commission for 2.5 years, and I live in northwest Fort Collins.
And my name is Bob Choate, and I've been on the Planning Commission for about 5.5 years. I live in the Stout area near Horsetooth Reservoir. We do have a couple of commissioners out tonight, and we have one vacancy. In case anybody in the room is interested in applying, the Board of County Commissioners will appoint that person. And then Ms. Axmaker, would you mind introducing staff?
Absolutely. Good evening, Chairman. My name is Jenny Axmaker. I'm the planning manager. Joining me tonight at the dais are Justin Curry, one of our planners, as well as Stephen Rothwell from our engineering group. We're joined online by Leah Schneider from the Health Department, as well as Christina Shruggins from the planning admin staff. So thank you all for joining us. With that, let me give you a quick procedural overview. We respectfully request that all members of the public silence their electronic devices. Please help yourself to a copy of the agenda and hearing procedure instructions, which are located on the wall right here. They're also available online. For the hearing procedures for each discussion item tonight, we will begin with a presentation from county staff, followed by a presentation from the applicant, with time for any clarifying questions from the commissioners. There will be an opportunity for any members of the public to address the commission with their comments on the matter. Both the applicant and county staff will have an opportunity to respond to any questions or concerns raised by public testimony. The commission will then ask any remaining questions of the applicant or staff before entering into deliberation and working toward a decision on this matter. For public comment, please wait to speak until recognized by the chair. Please maintain civility, refraining from audience applause, comments, or disruptions, whether positive or negative. Please make all comments to the commissioners from the podium. A portable microphone is available if needed, and please state your name at the beginning of your comments and provide a spelling if it's uncommon. Please speak directly into the microphone so that the remote participants may hear. And for those of you joining us on Zoom, you will be muted until you're recognized by the chair. And if you wish to speak or request a consent item to be removed, please use the raise your hand function on the Zoom control bar. Upon request, assisted listening devices are available for the hearing impaired. And on tonight's agenda, there is one discussion item and no consent items. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. So the next thing on our agenda would be public comment, not on the one discussion item, but on anything else related to the county land use code or regarding relevant land use matters that are not on this agenda and not going to be considered hearing items in a future agenda. Is there anybody in the room or online who would like to provide public comment on these matters? All right, seeing none, we'll move on. Next item is approval of the minutes. Has everyone had an opportunity to review those minutes? And I'll take a motion to amend them. Otherwise, I would take a motion to approve.
I do have a motion to approve the minutes from our October meeting.
I'll second that.
All right, motion and second to approve the minutes as presented. Any other comments? All right, I would request a roll call vote, please.
S. Johnson,
Yes?
Rowe,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
Duffy,
Yes.
Slutsky,
Abstain?
Chair Choate.
Yes. All right, minutes are approved. Thank you. Are there any other amendments to the agenda for this evening?
No, Chair, there are not.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to our discussion items. We have one item on our agenda, City of Loveland Trail Connection, location and extent, file number 23, zone 3553. I will turn this over to Mr. Curry.
Good evening, Commissioners. Tonight, like I said, my name is Justin Curry. Tonight, I'll be presenting on the City of Loveland Trail Connection, location and extent, file number 23-zone 3553. Location and request, so location and extent review for the City of Loveland to construct a new 1-mile trail connecting the existing Boise Bend Natural Area here on the map here to the west, and the future Willow Bend Natural Park natural area here to the east. And here's a little context where the trail and natural areas are located. Here's downtown Loveland, the existing water treatment plant, etc. And location and extent review. So per Colorado Revised State Statute, whenever any county planning commission has adopted a master plan of the county or any part thereof, no road, park, or other public way, ground or space, no public building or structure or public utility shall be constructed or authorized in the unincorporated territory of the county until and unless the proposed location and extent thereof has been submitted to and approved by such county or regional planning commission. And then Article 644 of the County Land Use Code considers the following public projects subject to the location and extent review. Those include public schools, hospitals, public campgrounds, public trails, trailheads and parks, and public roads. And then the purpose of the L&E review, per the Land Use Code, is to determine if a public use, structure, or utility proposed in unincorporated Larimer County conforms with the adopted county comprehensive plan. The L&E review is not a review of the Land Use Code standards nor a technical review of the proposed design. To approve the L&E application, the Larimer County Planning Commission must find that the proposal is consistent with the Larimer County Comprehensive Plan based on consideration of relevant plan principles, maps, and elements. The next few slides will be several of the elements from the comprehensive plan that the applicant has provided and some county staff has included some in there as well, where this item relates to the items outlined in the comprehensive plan, the relevant elements. One of them is, dealing with economic health and resiliency, accommodate recreation land and conservation as valuable land uses in rural areas, rural development, conserve natural resources, and where appropriate, support recreational uses within public lands or privately owned conserved lands. And then encourage community connectivity, encourage a broad distribution and connectivity of open spaces and natural areas for recreation, habitat conservation, associated physical and behavioral health opportunities. And then there's a series of other ones here dealing with natural resources, wildlife habitats, watershed protection, and then also with some terrain and natural hazards, is kind of more dealing with the regulations of flowways and floodplains and helping with wildfires and things like that. So summary, the application was referred to multiple agencies, including county engineering, health and environment, Larimer County JS, parks, and the flood review. We received engineering comments back from engineering and county floodplain. and the comments are provided as attachment D in the attached staff report. Public notice was sent to surrounding property owners, which was a total of 97 within 500 feet of the proposed project area, and no official comments were received from members of the public. Again, so the review criteria, to approve LNE application, the county commission must find that the proposal is consistent with the county comprehensive plan based on the relevant plan principles and map elements. So the findings and recommendation. The applicant has provided information with respect to this proposal, which does not reveal any significant issues or conflicts. As long as the post-construction is constructed in a way that meets the requirements of any state, county, and local regulations, staff finds that this proposal is consistent with the intent and purpose of the Larimer County Comprehensive Plan. And the Development Service Team recommends that the Planning Commission, approval of the City of Loveland Trail Connection location and extent, file 23, zone 3553. And with that, if the commission has any questions for staff, I'd be happy to answer those. If not, the applicant is here to give their presentation as well.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
sir. Are there any questions for Mr. Curie? Commissioner Slutsky.
Thank you. I have a question. I have a couple questions. In your packet, it states what you just said, really, that location and extent applications don't require public comment and or public notice. I'm sorry. And so I understand that. I have pretty strong feelings about doing that, even though it's not mandated. But what it says there is that, and it implies that you didn't give any notice. And then the next sentence says that as the date of drafting the staff report, no comments have been received. And so you didn't provide notice and there was no comments received. Is that correct?
So I believe that's referring to, I think, some of our applications we're required to notice the public when we receive an application, and not, and then on top of when we send notification for the meeting. So I believe in LNEs, we don't require to send notification for
To neighbors.
when we receive the application, just when we schedule the hearing. And so when they get the hearing, that information is included, and there's, a 2-week or so notification.
So
I
there
believe
was
in the reference.
there was a mailing notification to all property
But it was-
owners within 500 feet of.
I'm sorry, there was?
There was announcing this hearing. So they were notified, they just were not notified when we received the application initially, which is practice in other case types as well.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. Just, could you put up the map, that one towards the end? No, the one at the end that's a little bigger, and that one. So it does look like there's one neighbor pretty close, Osborne Farms, and so you had not talked to them.
They were, again, if they're within that, 500-foot notification area, they were referred the the application information. And so along with that submittal, there's a link that has all the, not just the meeting information, but also what was supplied by the applicant. And so that stuff was included in there. And we received no written communications with them. I did receive an email, of someone asking kind of general questions about it, just what it implied. And they were, more of their questions were geared towards a site plan, which is more technical, more detailed elements of the application, which were not there yet. And I was like, this is just for reviewing with relation to our comprehensive plan and if it complies with the long-term zoning and land use. And so that all that information will be done at a later date.
Yeah, my concern is that that's an agricultural operation. In fact, on their website, they claim to be the oldest agricultural operation in the state. So it's a legacy farm, it's ag tourism, and it looks like the trail is right on the border, the property line.
Right. The applicants are here too, so they may have had more discussions with
Yeah,
them. But yeah, as far as,
that could be covered.
yeah, that, they may have more information on that, but as
Because-
far as the county's, our point of view, we sent notification and they didn't reach out with any questions or concerns.
Okay. Well, I hope that's good, because I could see, having owned an agricultural operation bordering a reservoir, in my case, there's problems that can happen with public crossing property lines. And it's a viable business as far as I can see. So I would like that to be addressed if it could be. And the other question I have has to do with the floodplain review, and that is way at the end of the packet. It indicates that there's no development, and so it says that there's not any regulation saying that in a floodplain, if there's no development, then there's nothing to stop it from being.
I might be able to help clarify
Yeah.
that if you would like me to.
Yeah, would you?
Yeah, so the floodplain development permits and the process that they would potentially need to go through, depending on the scale of improvements being requested and, the proximity to the floodway, and the flood fringe, is dependent at what would be the technical review level. So when a trail's actually being proposed and alignments for a trail's actually being proposed, that's the time that floodplain development permit, potentially flood review board would get involved. At the location and extent level, we're just, we're not reviewing that level of detail. So in Tina Kurt's comments, that's what she's trying to say, is that yes, there are applicable floodplain regulations and processes that will go through if actual ground is being proposed to be disturbed. But as at the zoning phase or the L&E phase, there's nothing more to comment on their side.
It seemed like they were trying to say that the definition of development didn't apply here. But from what I see, there's going to be a trail made, and that's disturbing the ground, which within what was in our packet, that would count as development.
And I would look to a little bit of help on definitions, but the actual location and extent process is not development. It's the siting. The actual, when they propose the use afterwards, if you deem it, if the commissioners were to deem it as appropriate, to what's the wording, best fit there, meet the comprehensive plan. If you deemed it then they would come in and actually propose the trail, the alignment itself, and that's what we consider development at that time, and would go through whatever the appropriate process is for floodplain regulations.
So this really has nothing to do with L&E.
We make sure to provide the comment as a notification to the applicant and the board itself to just say, hey, we are looking at this, but it is not really part of our purview at the location and extent phase. It moves into our purview if you were to approve it and they were to propose actual ground disturbance or structure or anything like that. So.
I guess, can you show where the various floodplains are on this map?
I have it up. I'm not part of the meeting.
Because it said I think it said there were two different, or maybe three.
I'm gonna have to join the meeting. Hold on one moment.
There's two. There's a floodway and a flood fringe.
Commissioner Slutsky, while he's doing that, I thought I might offer a comment. If we look at the response from Tina Kurtz, who, as he was saying, it's just a notification that they're going to be looking at this. I think this is likely going to require some sort of floodplain review because she says very clearly, development for purposes of floodplain regulations includes any man-made change to improved or unimproved real estate. which includes buildings and structures, but also mining, dredging, filling, grading, paving, excavating, or drilling operations. So I think at the time that they do the technical review, they're going to have to demonstrate compliance with the floodplain regulations. It's just that it's not what we, not within our purview today. That it's not a discretionary decision. It's like a building code. You just got to comply. They'll have to work that into their
Okay,
plans.
that's fine.
Yeah, it's a good question.
You don't need to do that, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm happy to. I wasn't included on the Zoom link, so I'm still working through the tech side, sorry.
No worries.
Just to help clarify the one thing you did ask was that you said there were two different floodplains. There's the floodway and the flood fringe. So yes, along the property there is both fringe and floodway.
Can you turn your mic on?
Can you hear me better now? Sorry. Being to the close proximity to the river, there is floodway and flood fringe along the property.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for staff before we call up the applicant? All right. Come on up. Well, no, we'll do the applicant presentation first.
Okay, good. So, good evening, commissioners. My name is Bethany Clark. I'm with the City of Loveland, and we are the applicant for this location and extent review. Get this presentation loaded up. Alrighty. Oh. Say that again. So if there's a power. I think I got it. There we go. All right. So you've seen this map before, but just want to point out that this Willow Bend Trail is just a segment of a larger trail that is ultimately planned for the future to connect to I-25 and connect our trail system to the Johnstown area. So just a couple images of the existing conditions of the site. This is, as I said, the Willow Bend Trail is located in southeast Loveland. It would cross over South Boise Avenue. So that first image you see there is located at the existing City of Loveland wastewater treatment plant looking southwest on Boise Avenue. And then the image to the right is a view of the trail alignment just south of the wastewater treatment plant looking northeast. There is an outfall channel from the wastewater treatment plant that we will have a bridge crossing over. And then the trail itself crosses north of several remnant ponds from gravel mining operations. This first one you can see right here is the most eastern pond on that trail alignment. Continuing on the trail alignment, this left image, you can see the second pond in that string of 3 ponds that we cross over. And then the right image is the furthest east that this trail alignment will start connecting into a future trail connected onto the City of Loveland property that was a future park and natural area. So this does have some wetlands on their area, and we will have a boardwalk crossing along that. So as Mr. Curry said, this is approximately 1 mile, 10-foot long, 1 mile long, 10-foot wide concrete trail. As we have 2 bridge or boardwalk crossings, and then crossing over South Boise Avenue, we would have a rectangular rapid flashing beacon for safe pedestrian crossings. This is the overall location and extent plan. You can see in yellow is the trail alignment that we're dealing with right now, except for that portion that is sort of hatched out. That is a portion that we'll be constructing as a separate project with the Willow Bend Park and Natural Area. So as I mentioned, this is part of the East Big Thompson River Trail, which has been identified in several city and regional planning efforts. It links our historic downtown to several important properties, as I mentioned, the future park and natural area, which is intended to be a universal access park. And the Boys and Girls Club is located just adjacent to that, as well as the Youth Gardeners. This aligns with the policy framework in the Larimer County Comprehensive Plan, as Mr. Curie outlined. These are just a few of the points that he touched on. So this property will continue to preserve wildlife habitat and provide passive recreation opportunities for the future. It expands the city's recreation trail, providing non-motorized options for transportation. The scenic lands and biodiversity of the wetlands and riparian corridor are a priority habitat, and they will be continued to be preserved, and they are connecting to other existing City of Loveland natural areas. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Ms. Clark? Go ahead, Commissioner Duffy.
Yeah, I just have one question. Before that, I think this is a great plan and a wonderful addition to the city of Loveland. One of the review criteria for the location extent is natural resources, wildlife habitat, and ecosystems, this fringement element. Out there at the site currently, I assume that there's already some kind of path that either people, but especially wildlife, may be using on the north side of the Thompson River. Do you guys anticipate by paving this that it will maybe potentially infringe on the movement of wildlife between the two areas that are being connected? Because I would assume that the wildlife is already moving in between those. If we pave it over, is that going to infringe on their ability to move between the two areas?
So which two areas are you talking about specifically?
The two areas that I'm talking about is between the Boise Bend natural area and the East Big Thompson, the Willow Bend Park there.
Oh, I see.
Those two right along the trail. I would assume, and this is the question, I'm not sure, but I would assume that there's already some kind of path from those pictures that you have there. And I would assume that there's wildlife moving along that path. And I was just wondering, if we pave it over, does that infringe on the movement of that wildlife?
I mean, I don't know for certain. I can tell you there is an existing 2-track road along the TCM property that the City of Loveland now owns. And there are portions of the trail that do follow that a little bit. The rest of that is just going to be not intended to be used as a 2-track trail anymore. As far as wildlife corridors, we haven't mapped out any wildlife corridors, but the trail itself is just such a low impact use as it is, and connecting to the Boise natural area. There may be some wildlife crossing, but South Boise Avenue is a fairly busy road, high traffic road. There's a lot of truck traffic going in and out of the wastewater treatment plant. But there is a bridge over the river that I think a lot of wildlife uses. And ultimately in the future, the city would like to, when that bridge gets replaced and expanded, that we would shift the trail alignment under the bridge.
Okay.
I don't know if you have anything to add.
Good evening, everybody. Brian Harding, Planning Manager for the City of Loveland Parks and Rec Department. Just a little bit of additional context. I think Bethany hit it right on the head that the Boise Bend natural area is actually on the west side of Boise Avenue. So any wildlife there has to not only cross a busy road, but also has to get around an existing wastewater treatment plant. So I don't know that east to west corridor is interrupted by this trail. I think most wildlife out there are typically following the river in that area. But what I did want to point out is that this is part of a much larger plan of conservation on the city's side. So the crosshatched area that you see to the right side of where this trail eventually leads to is the new Willow Bend Park and Natural Area. That's approximately 80 acres. That was an 80-acre parcel slated for development. It was previously owned by the McWhinney Company. If you know who McWhinney is, the developer of Centerra. We have a great working relationship with them. They're also very conservation-based in terms of our dealings with them and how we've acquired some of these large parcels of land. The TCM property, which is really kind of the balance of the property that the trail runs through, so that main east to west corridor was also formerly owned by the McWhinney Company. It was actually personally owned by the McWhinney family. So that was another development eligible parcel that was about 48 acres that has now been taken off the table for development. And then another development in addition, right around where it says Legend, we also just picked up an additional 38 acres down along the river in that location. So that totals about 165 acres of basically conserved land that will not be developed. So as part of that, of course, utilizing taxpayer funds to purchase those properties, as well as taxpayer funds to build trails like this, there is an expectation that, of course, the public has access to the taxpayer land that they are helping to fund. So all in all, I really want to stress that this actually takes about 165 acres of highly developable land off the table. So I think that we end up here with a pretty big net benefit for wildlife, especially being down here along the riparian corridor. And if I can add one other quick note, there was a question before about Osborne Farm. They've also been a partner in this project to a certain extent. So on the south end of the wastewater treatment plant, where this trail circles around the south side, we actually bought a parcel of land there that was between the wastewater treatment plant and the river from the Osborne family to allow that trail to come along the south side of the wastewater treatment plant. I think the important thing to recognize there is that the balance of Osborne Farm, and you're right, it's a beautiful property, it's a centennial farm here in the city. They are on the south side of the river. So in order for anybody to actually go from the trail to Osborne Farm, not only do you have to cross through a pretty wet property that has some significant ponds and wetland structure on it, you would also have to cross the Big Thompson River in order to end up on that property. So we like to consider them a partner in this project. And I actually think also taking these properties off the table for development is hopefully a big help here to their agricultural operation as well.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Clarkham, Mr. Harding? All right, well, we're going to open this up to the public, and so if you'll have a seat close by.
Thank you.
So it's a public hearing. Anyone in the room or online would like to provide public comment on this application for location and extent, now is your opportunity.
And a reminder for those online, please raise your hand. We have one hand raised online.
All right, well, let's start with the person online.
Asked Lawrence Long to unmute, and you may now begin.
Thank you. My wife and I actually live in the neighborhood that is just north of this proposed walkway or pathway, and did receive a notice about this project, about the public hearing. But back to one of the commissioner's comments, it doesn't really speak to having the ability to provide comment, but besides coming to this meeting. I just wanted to point that out since that was brought up earlier. My wife and I have lived in this house for 13 years. We live at 421 Rybell Court, which if you look just north in that neighborhood, you'll see a cul-de-sac. We're in one of those houses that doesn't have a house across the street from it. We bought this house because of, I think it was referred to as the East Pond, or maybe the West, it actually is the West Pond on the map. We can see it from our front porch. One of our concerns is, of course, impacting that area, impacting the wildlife that we see every day from eagles, waterfowl, coyotes, deer, everything else. While I think the gentleman from Loveland said the impact would be small, I don't necessarily agree with that. The other thing that I wanted to bring up is I think we all know that a lot of these walkways in the Loveland area provide not only a chance for people to recreate, but also as a pathway for some of the folks that are less fortunate and are homeless to commute and also camp at the same time. That primarily is my biggest concern about really paving the way for a highway for folks to go back and forth in this natural area and impact this neighborhood that is just, well, less than 500 feet from where this path is going to be. and you don't have to cross the river, just like Osborne Farms. Just 1 second, I'm sorry, I'm looking at my notes, make sure I get all my comments in there. I think that's it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Long, for your comments. We will bring them up to the applicant. Is there anyone else online that would like to speak?
We do not have any other attendees.
All
Chairman.
right. Sir, here in the room, come on up. Please state your name for the record, please.
My name is Keith Brown, brown like the color.
All right.
I too live in the subdivision that is just north of this planned trail. I moved there 6 months ago. My understanding is that you only purchased this property a very short time ago, and you are making up the plans for it very fast. So I have a number of concerns and misstatements made in this meeting this evening. So to start off with public comment, the only reason I'm here is because of the postcard, so kudos for that. I then go to your website, I try to find the information on this. It is very difficult. There is an very unobvious button you have to get to this information. I can't remember what it says. It could be red in color. It's extremely not obvious how you get to the packet of information you had out here. However, I reviewed that information and nowhere was there any statement about I had the ability
Sir,
to make a comment.
would you just direct your comments to us?
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Sure.
And just to be clear, this is an application by the City of Loveland, which is a separate entity from Larimer County.
Okay, but the information for this, I believe, was on a Larimer County website.
Right. We're a Larimer County volunteer board for sure.
Right. So
go ahead.
That website is very unobvious. I think many of the people who would have been here because of an interest never got to your full packet of information. And nowhere in there, at least for I could see, was there even the possibility of commenting before this meeting. And so I am very concerned that this group has started with no one has concerns because no one has commented. You made it virtually impossible or impossible for people to comment before it on this topic. So that was very difficult. I find repeated conflicts between what this gentleman stated as the process, Mr. Rothwell, and what has gone on. So you've talked about, this is very general, this meeting is just a consistency with the county plan. However, both the applicant and commissioners here have made pre-decisional decisions about talking about the alignment when we're not even supposed to be talking about the alignment this evening. Overall, I understand there's a trail to be built around the city, and I am supportive of that. I am very concerned about the location, and there's a lot of things missed about that. But number one is that this was just about, is it consistent with the plan? And yet all of you have been referring to very detailed phases of the next piece of this, which is supposed to be, and I apologize, the trail alignment, seemingly next phase. So I'm very concerned you've gotten that confused. Moving on, I have numerous concerns about the trail alignment. One, it puts it south of that pond. Living in this subdivision, the water treatment plant is extremely stinky at times. It is overwhelming. I do not believe that the public is going to go south of that pond. They're going to enter this property and go north of that initial pond. Secondly, I'd ask you to move the, again, existing alignment wall. That is seemingly not a final decision here. You all have referred to that and muddied the waters. I would ask you to move that alignment away from the subdivision and closer to the river. I'd also argue, as one who has managed the public for over 33 years professionally, that if there is no fence, and I have not heard or seen anything about that, between the trail and the river, the public is going to the river anyway. I would argue that being adjacent to the river is a very special recreational opportunity, and you're missing something by putting the trail up on the hill next to the subdivision. It should be moved next to the river, and there is an alignment. I've checked this out on Google Maps. And that is another challenge here for the public, as you have locked the public out. You have signs posted at the edge of these properties that say the public is not allowed in. So it's very difficult for the public to try and gain information and an understanding of the property when we're strictly prohibited by the county from even going and checking it out. And you have an application brought before you to make a decision when neither, as far as I know, none of you have been here, and the public has not even had an opportunity to go there before providing comment.
Thank you, sir. Did you have any other comments?
Yes. I too have concerns about the potential for the homeless living here. This is certainly at the edge of the city and likely at the edge of the county. So as we move forward, interested in listening about how much patrols and agency presence will be here, because this will be a great place to live. I also have concerns about fires. Because of the homeless starting those fires that would burn into the subdivision, that is of threat. I would also note that there is large amounts of gunfire in this area. There are state parks that are just east of this map. I live in the subdivision, and so I hear that gunfire every weekend, and many, especially weekend mornings, it goes on for an hour or two in the morning. So I also request that you consider those safety concerns, because if someone was hit by an errant bullet, then likely the counties could be on the hook for that incident. My final comment is, I'd have you think about how clear you are making this for the public. Gentleman Slutsky had some concerns, and I thought your messages and communication to him were helpful. But if he is confused, then I would argue that the public is extremely confused and ignorant to the process, and ask you to consider that when you make your decision. Did the public really understand the process?
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your comments. We will ask at a minimum the applicant to address those that they can, and we appreciate you being here tonight.
Thank you all.
All right, I'll go ahead and close public comment and ask the applicant to come back up. And I saw you taking some notes. I did as well. I'll ask you to address those if you can.
Sure, and I'm happy to compare notes and try to make sure we caught everything. So maybe a little bit of background about this trail alignment. The city has actually held an easement across the TCM property for many years, long before the city acquired the property. So the city did have the opportunity to acquire the property last year. This is a property that we've had our eyes on for many years. We've tried to acquire and have not been able to do it. Again, it was privately owned by the McWhinney family. I think one of the interesting things about the hunting and gunfire question, and there's kind of several aspects to that. This was a property that was previously used as a kind of private family hunting ground down here, having the wetland and the ponds that it had. So the city does not allow hunting on any of its properties. In fact, gunfire within the city is prohibited. I think the gunfire that we're discussing here is coming from the Simpson Pond State Wildlife Area, which is out to the east of Willow Bend, which is right down there in that corner. So if you notice, we actually have a pretty significant buffer between Simpson Pond State Wildlife Area and where this trail is aligned. We did not choose to go farther south or east with this trail, putting it any closer to Simpson Pond State Wildlife Area. So that is a property out there that's regulated by the state that the city doesn't necessarily have control over, but of course, intentional shooting across those boundaries, I understand accidental is always a concern. Intentional shooting onto the Willow Bend property is obviously not allowed. So I wanted to go back again to this idea of the intention of a trail. So the city has had this easement out here. This is not necessarily something that's a brand new idea and I think hastily conceived. The ability to purchase the property is a newer development. I do want to stress at this point that alignment, of course, in order to enter into the location and extent review process, we have to have some alignment to be able to speak to. I believe that that's essentially a precursor to this process, as we have to identify, well, where is the trail intended to go. But that's also why it's shown on this map here as a dashed line at the moment. We are at a very high level review. This is one of the initial stages of review in the county's process. So kind of look at this a little bit more as that 10,000 foot level. This process or this project is still subject to technical review. And that's of course on the county side as well. So we will have essentially full construction documents, floodplain permitting. All those are yet to come through the county's process. Regarding access to the river, it kind of works both ways. So on one hand, of course, one of our goals out here is to protect wildlife. By going closer to the river, which I understand the thought process about moving the trail closer to the river, but it also comes with the downside benefit here of taking over riparian habitat, wetland habitat, and some of those more sensitive habitat areas for wildlife, which is one of the main reasons to push this trail a little bit farther to the north. There's also significant wetland complexes farther to the south. You can see the ponds out here, which are formal gravel ponds. In between those ponds, it is a very wet property. There are not a lot of feasible areas down there, number one, to construct a trail, but number two, wetlands are also very sensitive wildlife habitat areas that we would typically choose not to put a trail through. Fencing. Fencing is always a great question. So typically our city properties, we do oftentimes fence our boundaries, especially when we have areas like subdivisions on one side. The river is a good question. We're also working on developing a management plan for this property, also with the Willow Bend property next door. There likely will be locations to access the river. We're working right now also with the county on a much larger plan, which is really a restoration project for the Big Thompson River that will go from First Street in Centennial Park all the way out to the St. Louis Avenue and Old St. Louis Natural Area, and then continuing east. And that's really kind of a post-flood restoration project. So we've done a lot of this work right now out farther to the west, if you're familiar with where the Sweetheart Winery is out there by Glade Road. Completed a large river restoration project out there a couple of years ago. That work is starting to move farther east. So working with the county, working with our stormwater division here in the city on some of those larger floodplain protection, habitat restoration, recreation opportunities. There's kind of a much bigger piece of the puzzle. Some other notes as well. Homeless. Homeless are always a concern, of course. And again, this is kind of a two-way street. So it is true that this property right now is not open to the public, nor is the Willow Bend property next door. And for essentially those reasons. Right now, these are not properties that are actively managed by the city. They are owned by the city, but we actually have a significant number of properties that we own but have not been developed for recreation. So hazards have not been removed, trails have not been developed, parks have not been developed on those properties. So until those properties are formally developed, we typically do keep them close to the public in order to keep unwanted trespassers. We have sometimes partiers out on some properties, also homeless. By having properties close to the public right now, they are not open to the public, including the homeless. One of the disadvantages right now of a property like that is that because there's no access to it, also means our police don't have access, fire doesn't have access, our staff don't have access in terms of driving through those properties. So there sometimes are, I think, misperceptions about trail corridors, that they bring crime and that they bring additional homelessness. It does create a movement corridor, there's no doubt about that. But it also provides an opportunity for Loveland Police, Loveland Fire, emergency services to access these properties, as well as our city staff. So if you have been out on our city trails, You will see city staff driving these frequently, big white trucks. We plow these trails, we maintain these trails, we monitor these trails on a daily basis. So there are eyes on these trails. And if and when there are issues that come up, they're fully accessible by police, by fire, and by emergency vehicles. So I think from a fire protection standpoint, that is a big deal for all of these properties, that we do now actually have opportunities to bring brush trucks and fire apparatus into these properties. I don't know that I will speak to the location and extent process. I know that's more of a county process, and I'll let staff speak to that. We are a participant in that process and hopefully attempting to follow the rules as they're written in terms of the application processes. So again, we see this as a first step. We have this on many of our trail projects. I think this was a bit of a change in the land use code in the last few years. Previously, we didn't go through a location and extent process, but as you know, we were before you last month. We have a few other trails coming your way here in the future. So we really see this as kind of that 10,000 foot view. Again, these general alignments on paper. There's a lot of refinement that happens over time on these projects as we get into technical review.
Any questions from the planning commissioners? Go ahead, Ms. King.
In the interest of addressing both the commenters about the alignment and the access to the subdivision, is there any reason, it looks like on Google Maps, there's kind of a trail that goes on the south side of the river. So I'm just wondering, is there any reason why the trail as it's shown has to be on the north side so it's accessible to those houses? Is there a chance it could be on the south side of the river?
On the south side of the river, we don't, so we only own
To the river?
up to the river, yeah. Or
I
are you
see.
talking about south of the ponds?
No, I meant actually south of the river.
Okay, yeah, we only
That's the
own
line.
up to, essentially the property that we own is the northern boundary of.
So no matter what, the trail is going to be accessible to that road and that subdivision.
So as I understand the subdivision, the boundaries around the subdivision is HOA maintained, and there is a chain link fence surrounding that area, so there isn't necessarily like access from the city property up to that subdivision because there's a chain link fence between our property and that subdivision.
Thanks.
Commissioner Beth Johnson.
Hello. So as part of the referral process, was Colorado Parks and Wildlife contacted for this particular land use application, or have you spoken with them?
So let me double check my notes here, sorry. 1 second. I believe they were included, but I have to double check.
If I could step in.
Oh, yeah.
We did not mention we have several grants that we were awarded for the construction of this trail, and through that process, because it is a grant that is managed by CDOT, so we have federal funds, which means that we have to go through a lot of environmental clearances before we can even proceed bidding out this project. So we are in contact with CPW, and we have an environmental consultant on board that has been helping us identify threatened and endangered species and migratory birds and raptors within this area. So we are working through all those nuances to get this trail built sustainably and working with wildlife resources that are in that area.
So if you're utilizing those federal funds, then the state agency of, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, they would have to be involved to ensure that you are not causing infringement on wildlife.
Correct.
Whether that be migration routes or, sensitive nests, habitat, you have to stay clear of that because of the funding source.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And one additional layer that I would add into that, those entities also have approval oversight of this project. So those funds are not released until folks like Colorado Parks and Wildlife do sign off on this project and fully approve of it.
Thank you.
And then an update, sorry, the project was referred to the Department of Natural Resources. We received no comments. And then
Thank you.
when they go to technical review, they will be the referral agency list expands at that point, more agencies will be involved and they'll be included as well.
Okay. And so, and then just a reminder, we are just looking at this as the property for a potential location of a trail, and that the final location of the trail, the design, the construction drawings, further detailed review will be handled through an administrative process. Is that correct?
Correct, through technical review, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Slutsky?
I'm not sure who this is for. It's more a process than specific to this application, but this property is owned by the city of Loveland. And so again, at the risk of embarrassing myself, how did this fall into our lap? We usually are looking at unincorporated Larimer County, and so that's part of the question. And is this the last county hearing that there'll be, or will there be one in Loveland, or is it, where I'm getting at, is this the last public hearing for the application?
So the first part, well, yes, the property is owned by the city of Loveland. It lies within, it's not in their town limits, so it's not under their purview for development review. So while they do own it, they are in the unincorporated portion of Larimer County. And then the second part, I'm not sure what Loveland review process is on these kind of projects. I'll let them speak to that, but this will be the last public hearing, because it's technical review is kind of like a site plan review, which is not like we have site plans in the county where those are not reviewed, taken to a public hearing.
Thank you.
So maybe you can opine on that a little bit. Is there an internal public hearing process or an internal administrative process with the city for approval of this project, or more than just budgeting?
Sure. So I think you hit the nail on the head. This is a city-owned property, but it is within unincorporated Larimer County, so it's subject to the county's review process in this case. So the city would have an opportunity to annex a property like this, and then it would go through a city review process. I think the work on this trail was underway prior to ownership, and so that option is still out there to annex, but there's not necessarily an advantage, I think, for either the county or the city to necessarily annex this property into the city.
Are there any other questions? All right, thank you very much for your presentation and your answers.
Thank you.
And I'd like to point out just a little bit for our audience, the way that a location and extent works in Colorado. The Planning Commission and Mr. Curie, tell me, or Ms. Axmaker, tell me if I'm wrong, but the Planning Commission makes the final decision on this. In the event that the Planning Commission were to deny this by finding that it did not comply with the Larimer County Comprehensive Plan, then an appeal would be actually made and decided by the Loveland City Council. Is that correct?
That is correct, Chairman.
Yeah. There's also, under the statute, a very short amount of time that the county has to act on, that the Planning Commission has to act on a location and extent application. It's a month or two, right? Anyhow, it's very short.
I believe it's 60 days, so it's a tight time frame.
Yeah, 60 days. So I'm sure that a lot of that is the reasoning for not having notification of the application, but only having notification of the hearing. We are limited by state statute in that respect.
And actually, it's 30 days. My apologies.
30 days. Yeah, very, very short. That's my recollection. So I just want to point that out for the members of our audience who felt like they didn't receive notification and appropriately. It's not the first time we've heard that. So, go ahead, Commissioner Rowe.
Well, so I think we heard a couple comments on the notice, and certainly high admiration for the staff, but maybe we can just take a look at the form of the notice and just make sure it's clear in terms of how, if the public has an opportunity for feedback aside from the public hearing, how that might work. And then I don't know if there's directions to the website or just addressing how people find the information. Obviously, it's a public hearing, so the intent is for the public to participate, so just making sure that we're good there, but thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Rowe. We hate to hear that people have a hard time accessing information on our website, though I do understand it is not the most user-friendly experience. We're always looking for ways to improve, so sincerely appreciate the feedback, and we'll look to make it more easy to find information.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions of staff? Otherwise, is there any discussion on the application?
Chair Choate, if I may, the location and extent application process is pretty narrow in our scope for approval and the criteria for approval. It really is, does the application adhere to the comprehensive plan? And the comprehensive plan, there were several items called out in the staff report and the findings and recommendations on how this application does comply with the comprehensive plan. I think that we need to remember that this is just the location. Is this property the best location for a trail, for that open space area? And then remember that all of those details will come later with that more detailed review, such as the floodplain development permit, as well as any site plan, the construction drawings, all of those details. So our scope is pretty narrow on these types of applications.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments?
Just a point of clarification, for this project and other projects, after location and extent, these applications go to technical review upon which the county planning commissioners do not vote.
Correct.
Yeah, there's a pretty significant technical review on behalf of the county engineering, floodplain review, all of that. Health, they'll, if involved, they'll look at it in a significant more detail. But that is an administrative process. It doesn't require any further public input. Any other comments? If not, a motion?
I'll make a motion that the Planning Commission approve the City of Loveland Trail Connection Location and Extent, file number 23, Zone 3553.
I'll second.
All right, there's been a motion and a second to approve location and extent 23 Zone 3553 for the City of Loveland. Any further discussion? If not, I would request a roll call vote, please.
Duffy,
Yes.
Slutsky,
Yes.
Rowe,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
S. Johnson,
Yes.
Chair Choate.
Yes. Congratulations on your application. It's been approved. And I'm sure we look forward to seeing more details of that when it comes and is made public. All right, we have one more item on our agenda, the reports from staff. Do we have anything, Ms. Axmaker?
We have no reports this evening, Chairman.
All right. Thank you all for being here. We are adjourned.